Hello YouTube, back with the next Yu-Gi-Oh! Review, and today I'm reviewing Structure Deck 10, which is also known as Machine Revolt. I mean Machine Re-Volt. Just so you're not thinking Revolt is one word, it's actually a hyphenated word, at least in terms of the name of this in English. I don't remember what it was called in Japan, but I don't think Japan really didn't have much in the way of names for their structure decks, but this structure deck was not really that good. I mean, it had a couple noteworthy prints in here. This is the first print of the Gadget monsters, red, green, and yellow. But really, I mean, I guess it also has some nice reprints in here too. I mean, Gear Golem's a common in here. That was pretty cool, but it's really not that great of a deck. I mean, as a whole, it's more of an Ancient Gear-based deck. It has a couple new cards in here. I tried updating it myself. I mean, this is also the debut of Ancient. Here's the Boss Monster. The Boss Monster is probably one of the better cards in the structure deck. It's easy to bring out. You've got Gear Town, which is a field spell. If it's destroyed, sent to the graveyard, which would even include setting on a copy of itself. You can get this card out for free. I mean, it's awesome. It also works to reduce the number of tributes for Ancient Gear monsters, and most of them actually have a number of tributes that they require. This is the ultra rare card in the set. It's a beat stick. You can use whatever you want. It's probably, I would say, hands down the best monster in this set, in this structure deck. And here's Ancient Gear Engineers. This is the debut. It's just a card Dr. Valley and Crowler use in GX, but it's really poor. It's pretty poor as a whole. I mean, yeah, I think it's got the traditional, characterized power drop cards, until the end of damage step effect, but it's pretty bad. I mean, yeah, it's searchable, but it's a level 5 monster. It's really pretty poor. In fact, there's another monster of similar nature to Gadgetron Dragon, to Gadgetron Chimera. It's one of the other new cards in this set. I've also included, speaking of Gear Town, I actually included a couple copies in here myself, so this is not included with the structure deck to my knowledge. Yeah, I think these are all, which is kind of stupid considering the fact it should have been. If you're going to include Ancient Gear monsters, you might as well include Gear Town. And it's not in here. It kind of boggles the mind. I mean, I couldn't even get this to work. I mean, here's Gear Golem as a common. This is the first debut of Gear Golem as a common, because it was originally an ultra rare. I should know. I pulled that card. And, this is one of the gadgets. It's got all three are in here. Let me just make that clear. And a couple cards that support Ancient Gear monsters are in here as well. Ancient Gear Workshop, probably one of the better cards in here, but not really that great. I mean, a lot of these cards I think are mostly just for reprint purposes. And some of the cards in here are banned now. You've got Ultra Offering, which is, I think, inevitably been banned for all its many uses. You can indefinitely pay life points. 500 life points isn't a whole lot to pay for getting a whole bunch of monsters out at once. Especially if you can reduce the tributes to 0 if necessary. And, of course, you've got Pot of Avarice, which is now banned as well. You've got the Substitute, which would not work well in this deck at all because it requires different types. But, I mean, it's a pretty poor deck. I'm not really sure what they had in mind here, but, I mean, there really aren't very many good cards in here. It's like, most is like subpar at best. I mean, there are no fusions in here. They could have reprinted Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem in this. They could have made it just a flat-out Ancient Gear deck and just said, okay, we're going to make a bunch of new Ancient Gear cards to really help support it. They could have done, I think they would have been probably better off using, I mean, yeah, it's a machine deck, but, I mean, I think you could do better than that. They could have made a double costing for machines where you can treat as 2 tributes for the tribute summon of an Ancient Gear monster. I think we may have gotten that more recently. This is also the debut of Stronghold Moving Fortress, which is used by Yugi Moto, the smaller Yugi, in the final season of the show. In fact, it was used in the final duel of the show as well. And later got a sort of an upgraded counterpart to it later in the movie itself. The Dark Side of Dimensions got an upgrade, Stronghold the Mobile Fortress or something. But yeah, I mean, this deck's pretty poor. I mean, this is probably not a deck I would recommend getting unless you really can update it. I mean, I think, luckily, we've gotten more Ancient Gear support lately, so you probably have a better chance at using it now, but really, it's not that great of a deck. I mean, I guess it's nice for the reprints, so you probably should get it for the reprints and nothing else. I mean, I don't normally recommend that, considering that that's usually more expensive than actually buying the cards individually. But for like $10, I think you just typically go for $10-12. You're probably you're gonna get a bunch of reprints. Of course, even at this point, you might as well just get them as commons. You can probably get them for much cheaper than that, even just by either going online, or I mean, they're probably a couple bucks each for most commons in this deck. It's arguably, I think, one of the worst that they've ever made. I mean, you can't really count the original starter decks because those are not meant to be competitive. I think these structure decks are meant to be competitive. But I mean, the only thing that was good, I think the gadgets were probably one of the few cards that were actually used. I think everything else was basically essentially chucked out the window, if you will. I mean, Galvatron Chimera obviously was used. I think that was probably the most common card used with Gear Town. That's for obvious reasons. You can't use Gear Golem on it, but I think you can get Gear. Let's see. Yeah, you can't use Gear Golem on. You can't bring it out Gear Golem because Gear Golem cannot be special summoned. You'd have to use it with a method that bypasses the summoning condition on each Gear Golem that says cannot be special summoned. That's the summoning condition right there. But yeah, pretty disappointing. I mean, they include very poor cards in here. Ancient Gear Beast is in here. It's like the second strongest Ancient Gear monster of the original Ancient Gear monsters when they came out in the Lost Millennium. But it's also got really, I mean, you're just not going to get very far with it. I tried updating it. But, I mean, really. I mean, yeah, now we got some help with the other. I think, yeah, we've had a new machine deck was released, and then we've had more Ancient Gear support. I think we got more coming in Duelist Pack 19 in Japan, which will probably be in the US eventually here. But, yeah, I'm disappointed. This is not a very good deck. I mean, most of the reprints are pretty subpar here. Most of the cards in general are subpar here. This is basically just an excuse to print cards that were never printed before. I mean, I guess it's a good thing that some of the cards in here, especially with a later structure deck, which has similar flaws to this one, because it includes new cards that could have otherwise been, you know, booster set secret rares. They could have done that with these cards, which would have been probably would be more disappointing, but at least you could have then used them for whatever you wanted. They probably wouldn't have more incentive. They're okay, wow, they're secret rare, people want them, the prices will skyrocket, and I'm sure they did. I'm sure they were probably pretty high per commons even. You know, the gadgets, because they were so heavily used. I mean, but kind of subpar, and even the gadgets are pretty subpar as it is, because they don't do a whole lot. They just add more. They just add another copy. You can tell what you add without reading the effect by looking at the artwork. The gears in the background actually hint who you get out of it. The green searches yellow, yellow searches red, red searches green, type of deal. But pretty underwhelming for a structure deck. I mean, you'd expect more. I think I may have brought the deck in once to a tournament. With the updates I had, it was not very successful. And I don't plan on updating it myself. I have not gone to a tournament in years. Not because I haven't, you know, because I've lost interest in the game. It's mostly because there aren't any tournaments nearby that I can go to that are kind of worthwhile. So even if I lose and do poorly, which I've done more recently, I mean, yeah, you could argue, okay, I can, you know, copy everyone else and do that. That's not only probably going to be expensive, it's unoriginal, it's boring, and I'm probably going to end up, you know, top tier decks end up paying for it in the long run. Not just because they buy the cards for a really high price, but then the cards get hit, and then you're down to one, so you end up losing money out of it, and the deck eventually gets crippled to the point where you can't use it. You're kind of left modifying it pretty heavily, which probably means spending more money and all that. But yeah, this deck would need a pretty major upgrade. Highly disappointing. Don't get it unless you plan on making some pretty hefty changes to it. So yeah, pretty underwhelming. That's my review on Structure Deck Machine Revolt. Thanks for watching.